Metroid Samus Returns. Ben Reeves, what did you give this game?
I gave it a 9.75.
Good God.
When it was announced, I was like, I'm excited that there's a new Metroid, but also the fact that it's a remake is kind of a slight bummer.
Yeah.
But then playing through it, I'm like, you know what? I'm not bummed at all. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, this is a lot of fun to play, and it feels a lot like Super Metroid. It's that Super Metroid revival that like people have been wanting for over a decade now. Like, make 2D Metroid, please, Nintendo, and finally they listen, and it turns out, this is what we want. It's really good.
So go ahead, Kyle.
I was just going to say, just as a quick thing, it feels more like Super Metroid than Metroid Fusion did.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
It's more old school.
Zero Mission and Fusion, like compared to those two, like it feels more like to me. I didn't play the original two or the recent fan remake, so like it felt like a new Super Metroid to me.
Why did Super Metroid? I'm curious why this feels more like Super Metroid compared to those others.
Fusion, this one's bigger, and I think that's the big takeaway. Fusion felt pretty A to B. You know, like there wasn't a lot that you could explore outside of the main path. And this, I feel like you do have more opportunity to get lost.
There's also that fusion element if you were collecting like the things that enemies would drop to power up your suit. In Fusion, I'm talking about, like that's how it worked. So it kind of felt, it was still a good game. I still really
it's still great. Yeah.
This one feels a little more classic in your moveset outside of the, what are they, the Aeons? What do you call
new like abilities subset, you would call it.
And the melee, right?
And the melee,
the counter system,
too, which is interesting. Talking about Fusion, like Mercury Steam, when they first approached Nintendo about doing a remake of a game, they wanted to remake Fusion. So I was just like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then Nintendo was like, no, we want to do Metroid 2 instead.
Nah, boy.
But they included a Fusion mode. There's
kind
of like a little tie in there.
Yeah, that's odd.
You can redo it.
So I'm curious about what had you so delighted while playing it. Was it just playing it and realizing like, oh, the bones of Metroid 2 were much better than I ever appreciated, even though you played M2R? Or is it just a matter of playing through it, they added enough content that it felt like a whole new experience?
Yeah, I would say both of those things are correct, because Metroid 2, I think, is a solid game for its time. It's hard to go back to now with like modern sensibilities, and like it just looks... It looks pretty archaic, I think, and it's very linear, and there's not even a map, which is ridiculous. So this one, it takes basically the concept of like you're going to hunt down all the Metroids, and you're slowly like going deeper and deeper into this cavernous system, and it builds out on that. So the map is like much bigger. You're getting items that you never got in the original Metroid 2. Some of the stuff that was from like Super Metroid. Some of the stuff like the Aeon abilities, which are our complete
whole new thing.
Huh. And just builds on that, like you said, with the counter system, which I thought is a much, I don't want to say much needed, but I think it's a much appreciated addition to just the basic combat.
That's surprising. I feel like if you would have polled 1,000 Metroid fans, like, what do you want in the next 2D Metroid? I don't think anybody would have said like a melee counter system.
Oh, no, I never would have said that either. Like, it's a little unintuitive.
Yeah.
But I've always felt that you're running through Metroid, especially because you're doing so much backtracking in Metroid, where the enemies are basically become nothing to you. Like, you're just jumping past them, and like they're not really that challenging anyway.
Okay.
So in this one, they are a little bit more challenging, and if you're not using the melee counter, I think you're gonna have a tough time. But
it also like it speeds up the game in a nice way, because normally you would get to a point where you're like, well, I got to get here. I'm not fighting anything.
Right.
But here you're like, well, you know what? Using that melee, once you get that rhythm down, it's so quick to kill an enemy with it if you do it right, that like it's worth it actually taking a moment to fight more and get more energy as a result, etc.
It's totally worth it.
It just speeds up running through the game and still keeping you active.
Right. So it was kind of a brilliant way to get you to like care about the combat, let's say, in Metroid. Plus they drop the Aeon abilities, which we've teased a dozen times now, which are basically the fuel resource that you use, this Aeon power that you get from killing enemies, and you can use that to power up a couple of different moves. Mostly it's like if you want to like improve Samus's shields. I like to call her Metroid. It's my little nickname for her.
Mrs. Metroid.
Yeah, Mrs. Metroid. You can improve her shields. You can improve her like attack power. So she'll like use this like Gatling gun like attack to like tear through enemies. Yeah, there's some enemies that you can't even beat without that.
So the entire hook of Metroid 2 is like, as you said, you're tracking down, hunting down all the Metroids in there, and there's 40 of them. I'm still trying to figure out what that means. In my mind, it means it's just completely open-ended. Like, hey, go find 40 of them. Is that basically the structure of this thing? Like, how many options do you have? Can you go from the beginning of the game, either hunt down and kill Metroid number 1 or hunt down and kill Metroid number 37?
No, it's not. There are areas, specific zones. So you might enter a zone, and there might be like 3 Metroids in that zone, and you have to
Okay.
beat those Metroids to unlock the next area.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like the progress in Mario, like getting the star pieces or whatever. You need a certain number to unlock the next picture or whatever, right?
Okay.
Like, it's kind of like that, but there's times that you can kind of go off the beaten path a little bit and go back and get more. But yeah, Ben's right. You do have to get certain numbers to unlock certain areas.
So it adds kind of a nice sense of progression and like linearness to it, but it's still not linear at all. Like it's still Metroid in that you're like exploring a map, mapping out a system, and you're like, oh, there's stuff here. I can't get to it. I need to remember to come back. And then you're like, oh, I got that new power, so now I can go back and get that energy tank, which is, for me as a Metroid fan, really satisfying.
Yeah, going back and hunting it down. So I was just traveling with Suriel, and he was playing a lot, and he was saying that like doing 40 of the same boss fight, they try to vary it up with like the environments or having some like ice Metroids or something, but does it get repetitive if you're just doing the same boss fight 40 times throughout the game?
Well, it's not.
It's not.
So Suriel's off his rocker?
There are I think
insane.
3 variations. Is that right?
There's, I think, more than 3
there's more
variations,
than 3.
actually.
Okay, yeah. So there's. I mean, you are doing the same one kind of multiple times.
Yeah.
But there are one. It gets progressively harder as you get deeper into the game. Like there's the sort of third form. I guess I won't spoil what it is, but it's kind of late in the game. But like the third form, maybe the largest form, really gave me a hard time the first time I got to him. But then you get new abilities, and that boss fight becomes easier. So you get a nice like, it's like, man, that guy was really tough, but now I have this new bomb, so that's going to make things easier. So there is a sense of progression within those bosses. They do a pretty good job making it not feel repetitive.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I thought about them as bosses when I was playing the game.
Oh,
That's
yeah?
part of the thing, because there are legit bosses in the game. There's a number of like harder enemies that are not Metroids that you fight that offer a decent but rewarding challenge. Whereas the Metroids were like, especially the easy ones,
It's
are
like
pretty
a
easy to take
collectible
down.
almost.
Yeah, it's almost like, here's the guy, I need to get him. Some of the harder like late level Metroids are a little bit more challenging and almost boss like encounters, but I don't know, I enjoyed those fights.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You guys have played a new 2D Metroid.
Yeah,
It's
not
what
that
we've
big deal.
wanted.
Well, it's not. This thing is on something called the 3DS.
Oh.
My
So now there's
biggest
something left to gripe about?
My biggest beef with it, when I turn on a 3DS game, that slider goes all the way up. Turn on the 3D effects.
Are you serious?
And guess what? This game didn't really feel it.
Really?
No 3D.
Yeah.
Wait,
Well, it has 3D.
No, kinda.
Well,
Okay.
you could
It's
say that
not-
about every 3DS game. Kinda has.
Reiner, I don't
stereotype
understand.
there.
You want it to be more 3D?
No, God, no. That switch should be thrown
This
into
is
the
all
depths of
okay.
hell.
Well, is it a bummer? Do you think it's held back by the hardware at all? It still looks great.
I think
right?
it should totally be on Switch as well.
You want to
looks
the bottom screen map though? That seems very nice.
Hey,
nice.
click a button, bring up map.
You're.
That's how we did it back in the day, boys.
I would adore having this game on Switch. Absolutely, I agree with you there. But the 3DS is great for it. Like my favorite Castlevania games are 3D or DS 3DS because having the map open at all times is really nice, and I do like it.
Yeah.
Put them all on Switch.
You know what
Everything
I
on
think?
Switch.
If you ever move it over to Switch, which I think it would be great, by the way, Nintendo, maybe do a Diablo style overlay where it's kind of like, kind of faded
weird.
out.
That'd be cool.
So you can
Yeah.
click on and off. Like, I think that'd be a really good option for Metroid.
It might just look like a mess, but it's a good idea.
Well, I mean, it's not like it'd be on there all the time. You have the option to.
Right,
turn it on.
right.
Yeah. I would imagine that the AM2R designer tried that at least. I've never thought about that. Have they ever done that in a
I don't think
Metroidvania
in
like the Diablo map?
Metroid, and I don't think I've seen it in any other Metroidvania that I can think of.
Something.
I think it would work, right?
People should write in like that Star Wars question they keep writing in about.
Yeah, with what's the most painful way for Samus to die? Is that-
That's right.
Okay.
what
Mr.
happens to
Mrs.
her body
Samus.
when she turns into a ball?
That is the ultimate question. All right.
I've honestly, I'm curious about that too.
I am trying to figure out who this game is for. Maybe specifically
People who
Everybody.
like good video games.
Okay. I see the 975 and it's like, holy God. And I don't know how much of it is just as a huge fan of 2D Metroid, you're just so thankful to see this and it's such a delight for you to play. But I've never really gotten into a 2D Metroid game. If I go into this, or people who've never played a 2D Metroid and they play this, maybe they played Metroid Prime or some of the 3D games, other M, going into this, does it just hold up on its own, or does it just hold up as such a crazy amount of fan service to the old games?
Yeah, I think it holds up, but it's also crazy good fan service. But it's also, like we mentioned, there's a lot of enough new stuff going on for it, so I don't feel like it feels like an archaic, like port of like, here's the same thing over again.
Yeah.
You know, it's still Metroid, very much so. And that's what Metroid fans want. But they've polished up a lot of the systems that I think makes it even better.
Okay.
Yeah, it didn't blow my socks off.
Oh.
Still
To
wearing
the
them.
degree of giving it a 9.76.
Right.
But, it is a great game, right? Like it is a great game. But I don't know if it's just I've had so many of these like games, from Super Nintendo to the other handhelds that it's just kind of worn off a little. It's not doing enough that's different.
That's crazy. It's crazy to hear like, new 2D Metroid. I've played so many of these lately.
I guess it's kind of like Skyward Sword for me. Like, a new Zelda, but then it's like, okay, yeah, this is pretty good. It's fun, but it's not, it's the charm has kind of worn off a little bit, whereas Breath of the Wild comes out and is a complete reinvention of what Zelda is, and you're like, oh my God, this is what I want.
Yeah.
This is kind of at that later end of 2D Metroid, like, yeah, this is what we wanted. But they're not really doing a lot that's completely different,
you
right?
can compare it to like A Link Between Worlds, I think.
Oh, interesting.
And then it's just like, it is exactly the Metroid game that everyone's wanted for a long time. But one thing I would mention actually specifically for like a new player, like someone like you, Hanson, who's maybe not a big Metroid guy, one of the, is it Aeon abilities? Is that what they're called?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is it lets you scan the environment to build out your map that way and find secrets.
Yeah.
And when I played it at E3, I actually kind of like worried that I was like, is this going to make it like too easy? Is it going to take away from the exploration? But I really adore its implementation because the big thing that it does is it just keeps you from having to do that thing that you always have to do in Metroid, which is like turn into a ball and just start bombing every like element of the environment.
Or scanning.
Well, Metroid Prime, I guess, right?
Well,
It's
Super
Super
Metroid had
Metroid.
that scan, but that scan.
But even so, like you would
was
still have
nice.
to bomb corners and stuff. Like you'd have to like if you saw like there's a secret here. Let me try to figure out where I can bomb. But now you can just do a quick scan and you can isolate like, oh, that's the thing I need to blow up. And then the puzzle becomes like, well, how do I do it? You eliminate that first step of just trying to figure out where to start. So it again, like with the counter and with that map ability, it kind of speeds up the whole sort of like fighting and exploration. But you still get the joy of like finding new things and getting new abilities that open up things that you already saw. So it's a really good game. It turns out.
Yeah, I mean, Reeves, would you stack it up just behind Super Metroid as your favorite 2D Metroids now, or where does it fall in the 2D Metroid spectrum?
Yeah, I probably would, honestly.
I
think I would too. Yeah.
I think somebody coming in fresh might even appreciate this more than Super Metroid, which probably sounds blasphemous to some people, including me. But it is a little more polished. I think the one thing, and this might be a nostalgia thing, is like that Super Metroid art style like really does it for me. And that's one thing where like AM2R, like I was like, man, the art style is really cool in this. And the new art style, I still think it looks great. Like it's a good looking game, but like it doesn't have that like
that
classic pop.
It's 3D as opposed to like
games do.
Yeah.
There's a weird detail in the Nintendo Direct, which we might talk about a little bit later. They were like pitching the game, and they said everyone from Metroid fans to Super Smash Brothers fans should pay attention to Metroid Samus Returns.
There are kids who only know Samus from Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
That is kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a weird angle. It's like, hey, if you like controlling that Samus character in 2D Smash Brothers, you'll love running around in a full game starring that character.
I can't believe they didn't say Federation Force.
Yeah,
Federation Force
Sports
fans.
Ball. Yeah, it's not on there.
It's a little bit different.
Gosh.
Reeves 975.
975. I think it's worthy game if you like 2D games at all.
Yeah.
If you like platform action games, like check it out. It's
Smash Brothers.
Or Smash Brothers. If you own a 3DS, I think check it out with that 3D slider turned all the way up.
Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version and listen to new episodes airing every Thursday. We cover big games on the horizon, games that we've just reviewed. We have long-form developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So check it out every Thursday.